Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today let's go over the best new and used graphics cards to buy for the month of February. So if you want to skip right to my recommendations for what graphics cards to get and what graphics cards to avoid, then skip to this timestamp. But I highly recommend you listen to this digest I gotta give on the current state of the graphics card market, because a lot has changed since my last GPUs of the month video. The market has completely flipped, or for those of you who want an Nvidia graphics card, it looks like this. Yeah. So here's the deal. If you were interested in an RTX 5090 or 5080, you're gonna have to wait until at least September of this year until you can realistically get your hands on one before the scalpers and the bots do. All right, that's gonna be the hard truth. You're gonna have to wait most likely 8 months just to get your hands on one of these. And that isn't even at MSRP. They're probably gonna be very marked up in price. It's gonna take maybe another few months until you can maybe find a 5080 for maybe $100 over MSRP. You're gonna have to probably wait until this holiday season. Most likely, you're gonna have to wait a very long time. And for those of you who think you can get your hands on a 5070 or 5070 Ti, because a lot of you who are watching this are probably eyeing those graphics cards because they don't cost an arm and a leg. But guess what? You're not safe either. Both of those graphics cards will also be subject to bots and scalpers for, yet again, probably 7 months. It's going to suck. You're not going to be able to get your hands on one unless you somehow get lucky and you have a micro center near you or a physical in-store location that is selling these RTX 5000 GPUs, and you're able to get a graphics card before the scalpers do. It's very grim. Please be realistic in your expectations. You're not going to be able to get your hands on an RTX 5000 GPU brand new for a long time. Reason why is I've seen this cycle play out at least 2 times already. I've seen it play out with RTX 3000 and RTX 4000. And with this current launch of RTX 5000, seeing the current stock and production issues that are right now happening behind these RTX 5000 GPUs, and in my opinion, certain economic conditions that are making people wanting to find easy ways of making side money, which in that case is gonna have to be scalping and botting graphics cards like this and then reselling them on the aftermarket for way more than what they paid for, it's not gonna be pretty. We're looking at an RTX 3000 like bot and scalping situation right now in 2025. So seriously, if you think you can get your hands on one of these, be realistic. It's gonna be incredibly tough. So if you're fed up and you just need a graphics card upgrade, but you still want to get good value, hear me out. Go used. Seriously, go used. Like the sponsor of this video, Java.gg. These are one of my favorite online marketplaces to buy used graphics cards because real gamers use this website, whereas on other used marketplaces, you may not know where the certain graphics cards are coming from, but Java.gg is pretty good. And as a matter of fact, they've got a whole GPU tab here for finding different graphics cards. For example, if you're someone who doesn't have thousands of dollars to drop on a graphics card, but you want a modest GPU to put into a gaming PC that's below 200 bucks, Java themselves right now are selling an Intel ARC A750 for $165. And they've got 2 of them available. And these have been tested and affirmed by Java themselves. That's actually a pretty good deal. But that's just one graphics card choice. Some guy is selling their 6-month-old XFX RX 7800 XT that has never been overclocked for $450, which right now in the current market, I think is quite modest. That is close to Black Friday pricing. Or better yet, and it's gonna be almost a cardinal sin for me admitting this, but if you actually wanted to buy a pre-built gaming PC, literally the only website I'm gonna tell you to look at is Java.gg. Here, for example, is an $830 gaming PC with an Intel ARC B580, which is hard to get your hands on at $830. That's actually fairly reasonable. So seriously, if you want to get a good deal on a used graphics card or on a pre-built gaming PC, go to Java. So with all that exposition out of the way, let me go ahead and run down what are the best graphics cards to buy from $100 all the way up to $1,000 plus. And you know what? Some of them are actually not too bad. I'll definitely be highlighting the best deals I've found so far in this video. However, keep this in mind. We don't know if certain tariffs in the United States, for all my US viewers, that will impact the semiconductor business happening in Taiwan will actually go into effect. But if they do, graphics card prices are gonna go up. So if you were hesitant on getting a graphics card, I opt for sooner than later. Otherwise, like what I just said, you're gonna have to wait until the holiday season. So another 9 months of waiting. So if you want to find the best graphics cards to buy under $100, there's only one thing you got to do. Either going onto a used marketplace like Java.gg, sort by max price of under $100, and here you can find plenty of different graphics cards you can pick up at very reasonable prices. But admittedly, if you want to get even better deals, then go into Facebook Marketplace. They're unbeaten when it comes to under $100. For instance, if you go here, San Francisco, let's set our max price to $100. What do we get? A $10 GTX 680? That's actually, I'd take that. If I desperately needed a graphics card, I'd take that. I'm liking this 8GB 5500 XT though for 80 bucks. I do like that. I'm also liking this GeForce GTX 1070 8GB for $75. That's also not too bad. Oh wow, and some guy is selling a Vega 64 for $100. That's actually really good. So again, if you want to make the most of your dollar for $100 or under, you have to go to a used marketplace. There's no other choice. There's no new graphics card that is even close to these in terms of gaming performance. Oh, but real quick, all the graphics cards that I recommend throughout this video, or at least all the good ones, they're all gonna be linked in the description down below if you wanna check any of them out. So with all that said, here is where we actually get into the video. But now, from $100 to $200, what are graphics cards you should get and what are graphics cards you should avoid? Well, there's only like 2 you really can avoid. Okay, I take that back. There's more like 3. And this is one of them. The RTX 3050 can technically be had for about $170 brand new. Do not get it. Do not get it. I mean, this is the 6GB model. This is the model that's even slower than the 8GB. Just because it has GeForce and RTX in the title for under $200 doesn't mean it's a good graphics card. This thing is 2 generations old. People are still buying it. Avoid it. It is extremely slow compared to the next graphics card I'm gonna say not to get as well, the Intel ARC A580. Don't get this one as well. You can actually technically get one of these brand new. ASRock of all people are actually selling one for $170 brand new, which on one hand I have to commend, but on the other hand, this is also not recommended below $200 because the only graphics card you should consider brand new for under 200 bucks, and it's definitely made a comeback, but it's the Radeon RX 6600M. This graphics card kind of faded out of the picture a few months ago. I want to say around summer of 2024, but now it's back in stock and it is available for about $170. Now, that isn't necessarily a better price than what we saw last year, because I remember making this exact same comment on the 6600M last year in 2024 at $170, saying it's a very good budget 1080p graphics card. So it hasn't necessarily gone down in price, but if you needed something brand new at $170, then this is a good shout. Otherwise, you're gonna have to play the used marketplace and find a really good used graphics card deal for the same price of this. But if you're looking for a modest 1080p gaming graphics card with very, very good power efficiency that can just be plug and play into nearly any PC, even an old Dell Optiplex at that, then this for 170 bucks is technically your best option. But in my opinion, I would save up another $80 or so because again, the price on this hasn't moved in a year, but the next graphics card segment I'm gonna cover is gonna offer way more bang for the buck, even if it's more expensive. So the 6600M is your only option below 200 bucks, but it's not that fantastic compared to a certain graphics card below 300 bucks, which we'll cover soon. Now for the best graphics cards below $300, let's first talk about the ones that you should not get, or AKA the worst ones. And we're actually gonna start with Team Red, Radeon. You actually want to avoid Radeon below $300, and this is one of them, the RX 6600. This was at one point a very good graphics card buy 2 years ago, but that is no longer the case. This, for instance, can literally be replaced by the RX 6600M that I just covered in the previous segment, as both graphics cards are basically the same and have nearly the same gaming performance. Yet you are paying about $20 more, although this is on a discount, but you can find these for about $200 bang on, which would make it about $30 more expensive than a 6600M, and that is not worth it because you can spend an additional $20 from this 6600 to get one of my recommended GPUs in this price range that is substantially better than it. So avoid the 6600, it is no longer worth getting in 2025. Here's another AMD GPU you want to avoid for under $300. It's the Radeon RX 7600. What an upset. This is probably overall AMD's worst RX 7000 GPU. It wasn't fantastic, and the main thing that was really holding it back was the amount of VRAM that it had. Right now, from what I can see on Newegg, you can pick up one of these for about $260, and that is not worth it. One of the graphics cards I really recommend in this segment that we're gonna cover costs exactly as much as this, and you can get it in stock as well. Now, this thing, 8 gigabytes of VRAM, that is not enough. A certain brand has definitely raised the bar when it comes to VRAM capacity for budget graphics cards, and that has made the 8 gigabyte 7600 obsolete. Do not get this graphics card. Oh, but don't think Team Green are off the hook. Nope. Somehow, some way, people are still buying the RTX 3060 in 2025. You want to see what I mean? Let's go over to Amazon. 2,000 people have bought this graphics card in the past month. No, it's slow. I don't care if it has that 12 gigabyte VRAM buffer on it. It's too slow to utilize all that. It's just not fast enough. And you know what's funny? The other graphics card I don't recommend in this price range is the 4060. And here's what's even funnier. The 3060 in some ways is aging better than the 4060, because if we look at the 4060, this costs the same as the 3060, but it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. And that's so funny. 1,000 people left have bought the 4060 over the 3060 in this listing right here, which is hilarious. Both of these graphics cards are not great. Please avoid Nvidia below $300. Please avoid them. They are not good at all. They have, for the most part, abandoned the budget GPU segment. Don't get either of these. Who hasn't, and who's actually embraced graphics cards under $300? Let's start out with one of them. And guess what? Team Blue, Intel ARC B570. You can pick up one of these right now for $234, which admittedly is $15 over MSRP, but seriously, let's go on to Amazon and you can pick up one of these right now. You aren't gonna have to compete with scalpers. You aren't gonna have to compete with bots. This thing is not grossly overpriced like an Nvidia RTX 3060 or 4060, and it's got plenty of hardware in VRAM, unlike the Radeon options that I just covered as well. This is basically what the RX 7600, this GPU right here, should have been all along. The B570 comes with 10 gigabytes of VRAM, which is very modest for about $235. And in terms of raw performance, it's the same as this until you get into any higher end resolution scenarios like 1440p. If you have any aspirations at all at playing by 2560 by 1440, the B570 and those extra 2 gigabytes of VRAM, according to benchmarks, does make a big difference. And with the 8 gigabyte 7600, it's left behind. And even worse, for AMD that is, in terms of ray tracing performance, this is the best in its class at its price. It's better than the 7600, it's better than the 6600, and it's better than the RTX 3060. So this is a very modest and decently priced graphics card, but in terms of what I would get at this price range, you really want to get the bigger brother from this. But you're not losing out on much getting a B570. This is technically meant to be an upsell to the next graphics card we're gonna cover, and ultimately the one I'm gonna recommend in this price range, but this isn't that bad. But without further ado, the absolute best graphics card you can get under $300, and for that matter, it's the best graphics card for budget PC gamers, period. If you're looking for an affordable 1440p gaming graphics card, this is it. Radeon aren't gonna give you that, and neither are Nvidia. It is the Intel ARC B580. And when this graphics card launched at $250, was that price too good to be true? Yeah, because all the bots and scalpers went immediately after it. But 2 months on, since its release, let's check Newegg. We've got some gunner models here for about $380, which I don't know why you'd pay that much for a B580. I don't even know how it's that expensive. But look at that. Look at these two Onyx Lumi models here, or Onyx Lumi and Onyx Odyssey ARC B580s you can get for $260 and $270. Let's look at this black model right here. If you don't care too much about GPU aesthetics, this here for $260 for only $10 above the $250 MSRP for the B580 is excellent. In terms of gaming performance, the B580, it beats this absolutely worthless GPU. It beats the 7600, obviously, and it almost matches a Radeon RX 6700 XT. But here's what's even crazier. If you invest in one of these Intel Arc graphics cards, this thing will get faster over time. It will. And the evidence is in their last generation of GPUs with the A580, A770, and A750. Those graphics cards at launch were not that great, but 2 years on, they managed to beat out AMD in terms of performance per dollar. And the launch of this graphics card was nearly not as bad as those last generation cards. In fact, it was pretty good. So I would say this graphics card has a better likelihood of getting faster over time than an Nvidia or AMD graphics card with eventual driver and graphics card optimization updates for this. And it also doesn't help those of you who may be interested in a Radeon card with the fact that these Intel Arc GPUs beat AMD in this price range really badly when it comes to ray tracing. So in a way, it's kind of like a hybrid. Like, it does pretty well in ray tracing like an Nvidia GPU, but it's got better hardware than an AMD GPU in this price range. Don't forget, this has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which at $250 is perfect. And there are many benchmarks out there that show this GPU doing really well at 1440p, despite costing $250. This really is the awesome price to performance we need to be seeing from AMD and Nvidia for budget graphics cards, and Intel is the one that is bringing it. And I think at this point, scalpers and bots, I think are gonna tone down a little bit. I think they're not gonna be as angsty about getting one of these because they're gonna be too focused on RTX 5000 and the eventual RX 9070 whenever that comes out. So for all of us budget PC gamers, I think the B580 is gonna be regularly in stock and close to its MSRP this month for February. At least this Onyx model is one example of it. So seriously, this is the best graphics card you can get, and it's not gonna get any better than this unless you spend about $500. So when we get to that price segment, we'll get there, but first let's cover the next price segment. Now for the best graphics cards from $300 to $400, you want to avoid all of them. Yes, you want to avoid all of them. And I'm actually gonna tell you to avoid the golden child that I've been recommending so much over these past few months, and that is the Radeon RX 6800. Why do I no longer recommend this graphics card? That is because it is going to be 2 generations old as of the RX 9000 series when that eventually releases this March. And secondly, if you look at its current selling prices, at $393, that isn't attractive. Because 2 months ago, this graphics card was the cream of the crop, probably the best Black Friday deal I have seen in a very long time, retailing at $330 on Amazon on Black Friday. That was just, what a time to be alive. What a time to be alive to get one of these for $330. But now, in February of 2025, $390, I wouldn't. We're too close to the new Radeon RX 9000 GPUs, and I think no matter what AMD puts out, even if it's gonna be botted and scalped the heck, it's gonna show this GPU at that price point is gonna be not really recommended anymore. Although this thing has had a fantastic run, a ridiculously good run, but at $394, it's just old. It's old now. Don't get me wrong though, it's got 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which can't be said for this hunk of junk right here, the 4060 Ti. It's so bad that not even Black Friday and Cyber Monday saved this graphics card. If we look at selling prices right now, $400 for a graphics card with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, that is just pitiful. The 6800 that I just covered has more, but this thing is not even on a discount anymore. Nvidia are going to replace it with the 5060 Ti either way. This is the worst RTX 4000 GPU, bar none, and you just want to avoid it like the freaking plague. I hope Nvidia does better with the 5060 Ti, but looking at RTX 5080 reviews, I don't know. I don't know how that scaling is gonna look like when we get down to the lower end SKUs. Hopefully it's better, but please do not get a 5060 Ti. And unfortunately, that also extends to the Radeon RX 7600 XT. So why not this GPU? Well, the answer is simple. On Amazon, this is selling for about $330, maybe $315 on Newegg, and there's just one problem. This thing, the B580 is as fast as a 7600 XT on average, but costs what, $40 to $50 less? Oh, and get this one's better at ray tracing, and it's got Intel QuickSync. It's good for video editors too. So I'm sorry, 7600 XT, AMD should have tried harder, because you're essentially a 7600 just with an extra 8 gigabytes of VRAM with a moderate overclock, and that isn't really anything to write home about. So 7600 XT is a no, which is why I said the B580 is like as good as it's gonna get unless you spend way more. So let's cover the next price category. Now for the best graphics cards from $400 to $500, let's cover the one that you need to avoid at all costs. Let's see, is it even visible? The 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. Just like the 8 gigabyte model, not even Black Friday could save this graphics card. If we check out the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, I am actually concerned that it's no longer being made. Because look, you can get a 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte for $688, which you should not be paying that much for that graphics card. Yeah, it looks like the 16 gigabyte model is done. It's not being made anymore. Nvidia have axed it off. That is not good. Maybe for the better, because it wasn't great. Which leaves us with two other graphics card options left, and I want to cover the first one, which I also want you to avoid. That being the 7700 XT. This graphics card is difficult to recommend because of its bigger brother, the 7800 XT. The 7700 XT technically isn't a bad graphics card. It's just that not so much an attractive price as its bigger brother. So yes, this may have 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is acceptable. Maybe not anymore because, you know, Intel are really raising the bar for budget graphics cards. Because this has the same amount of VRAM as the 7700 XT. And in terms of raw performance, it didn't necessarily blow it out of the water. Because again, the last generation RX 6800 that I said to avoid for the same price as this is slightly faster than a 7700 XT. Mostly because it has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, whereas this has 12. So the 7700 XT, underwhelming. It's no longer on discounts because it's no longer Black Friday and Cyber Monday. I'd avoid. It's not that strong of a graphics card purchase. But finally, to put a positive spin on this video, there is one graphics card I will still recommend into February of 2025, and it is the RX 7800 XT. If we check out pricing right now, you can get this Sapphire model on Amazon for $480. And if we check on Newegg, we can get one from Gigabyte for about $490. And also again, $480 from Sapphire. $480 for an RX 7800 XT after Black Friday and Cyber Monday is still a good buy. And I'd say it's an even better buy considering the fact that this could be the lowest it'll be for the rest of the year. Because again, tariffs could implement and could raise the price of this graphics card by an unknown amount. So if you're in that boat that you needed a graphics card before those tech tariffs go into place, if you're in the United States, I think the 7800 XT is still pursuing. And on that note, we need to talk about the rumored RX 9070 XT. The 9070 XT was supposed to release this month, never did, and it's gonna be delayed until March. And no matter how good that graphics card is, and no matter what price it's at, and no matter how much AMD hype goes behind that graphics card, guess what? You're not gonna be able to get your hands on one. You're not. The same arguments that I just gave at the very start of this video on why if you're thinking get your hands on an RTX 5000 GPU, you're basically delusional, also apply to the RX 9070 XT. Now, it's not going to receive the same ridiculous degree of scalping and botting, but it's still going to be pretty bad. And even if it releases in March, again, I hold to my prediction that you won't be able to get your hands on one in stock that isn't from a bot or a scalper until September of this year. You're gonna have to wait for it. So with that in mind, knowing the fact that you aren't gonna be able to get your hands on a 9070 XT whatsoever, even if it's priced at $500 and smacks the 7800 XT. Again, keep this in mind. We don't know what tariffs are gonna do. They could raise the price of graphics cards next month, or the month after, we don't know. But if you needed a very good price to performance, sub $500 GPU right now, still the 7800 XT is it. It still is. It's the best RX 7000 GPU AMD released from this generation. If it were at any price below MSRP, it'd just be flat out worth it. And I feel glad that card manufacturers like Sapphire and Gigabyte are still selling this graphics card brand new, because it is seriously going to be tough to get your hands on a $500-ish graphics card for a while because of scalpers and botters. Because the cheaper you go, like with the B580, the less profit margins you can make if you scalp any of those graphics cards. But if you go more expensive, above $500, you can take a $500 9070 XT and price it up to like $700 or $800 and make $250 off of it. And it gets even worse with like a 5090. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen, but those things are reselling for like $5,000, which is just insane. So, I mean, get in if you want now. You're welcome to wait. If you want to feel morally superior and wait for the newest thing, sure, wait for the 9070 XT. So you're welcome to play that game. Or you can take my advice and get a GPU that is on a discount below MSRP that is the best of RX 7000 before tariffs. Your choice. It's the best GPU for 1440p gaming, period. Well, not technically the fastest, but in terms of price and performance, this is it. Next price category. Oh, and real quick, before we move on, I do want to give mention to the used graphics card I would look at getting from $400 up until $500, and that is a used RX 6800 for about $400. You can find some of these on used marketplaces for at that price, and why I like that option so much is because it's got the performance of a 7800 XT, but at the price of a 7700 XT, and that is pretty neat. The only downside though is that this thing consumes a lot of power, so it is a bit of a hot boy when it comes to temps and power consumption. But if you can put a moderate undervolt on this, it's a good used graphics card buy, and one that can definitely get around all of the madness that's happening right now in the GPU market. I think people who are selling the 6800 XT could be looking to get a 7900 XTX or one of those higher end Nvidia cards that they think they can get their hands on, but they probably won't. So the 6800 XT, from what I've seen, is a good used graphics card buy to get in 2025, even if it's gonna be technically 2 generations old when RX 9070 XT releases. Now for the best graphics cards from $600 up into $800, there's only one. Because seriously, Nvidia was not kidding when they said they would cut production of RTX 4000 GPUs. Because if we look up the RTX 4070 on Newegg, we get one result here, not even the Super, which is the significantly better model of the 4070, for $600. That's not good. 4070 Super, that's the good one. $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, 600, 771, you get my point. All of you who wanted a 4070 or 4070 Super missed your window. I told all of you to get it back in November and December of last year. Yeah. The 4070 is gone, and the 5070 that's going to replace it, no matter how good it is, like I said, you won't be able to get your hands on one because of bots and scalpers until September. Have fun waiting. So what can you get instead? And this is going to be a tricky recommendation, because believe it or not, you can still get a 7900 XT for $650, like this Sapphire model here, which is very, very reasonable. The only issue is the RX 9070 XT. Like what I just mentioned in the previous segment. That graphics card is probably gonna launch at $500, be really flipping good, and it's gonna beat the 7900 XT. But unfortunately, you aren't gonna be able to get your hands on a 9070 XT because of scalpers and because of bots, which then leaves this at $650 tricky, because would you rather get a scalped 9070 XT for like $650, or you just get one of these right now for $650? It's gonna be tricky because we don't know how fast that 9070 XT is gonna be. The only thing we do know is that potential tech tariffs that would raise the price of this graphics card and all the other ones that come after it aren't yet in place. And if you needed something at $650, this is your only option. It's not a bad option at that. It's pretty good at $650. It's just the issue is, again, AMD, that 9070 XT. How good is it gonna be? So this one's tricky. I would say if you needed a fast graphics card right now for $650, given that this was before tariffs, this isn't a bad shout. But if you think you're gonna wait for that 9070 XT, yeah, it's gonna be faster than this. But newsflash, you aren't gonna be able to get your hands on one for a really long time. And even then, when it does come back in stock, it's gonna be overpriced. But even that overpriced could be a better value than this at $650. So that's why this is difficult. If you wanted to do budget 4K gaming, this is it. And if you needed something at this price point, then sure, get this 7900 XT. But if you can wait, this might be the only GPU where I'd hold off. I wouldn't get one of these immediately. I would hold off. Now from $800 to $1,000. This is fun. There's only one graphics card you can actually consider. And guess what? It's actually a really good buy right now. Because we gotta thank Nvidia for this. Because actually, as of filming this video, it's out of stock. So let me tell you what's up. Nvidia released the RTX 5080 not too long ago. And as per a lot of reviews, it offers barely, not really barely, but nothing impressive over its previous RTX 4080 Super. And it is the first 80 series GPU ever, at least from what I can recall in the last 10 years, that didn't beat the Halo card from the previous generation. The RTX 5080 did not beat the 4090 in terms of performance, whereas the previous 4080 beat the previous 3090, the previous 3080 beat the previous 2080 Ti, and so on and so forth. This is the first time in a while where that hasn't happened, because the 5080 was that upsetting. And what that has done in turn is that it's made my GPU recommendation that so many of you upvoted on my community post, because it really is the thing to get right now, to unfortunately go out of stock. Oh my God, never mind. It is back in stock. Boys, we are so back. Radeon RX 7900 XTX. This graphics card, and why I've been recommending it so much over the past 365 days, just keeps getting better and better. You can get one of these for $830 right now on Newegg. Why are people all of a sudden buying the 7900 XTX? That's because there's quite a few benchmarks where the 5080 has either the same performance as this, or somehow it's a little bit slower. You would expect a huge leap in generational performance from Nvidia, going from a 4080 to a 5080, but that wasn't the case. And it means this thing, at $830, it's actually, not only has it aged well, I'm still gonna recommend it. And here's another thing as well. AMD said they're not gonna produce a high-end graphics card for this generation of GPUs. They're not going to produce an RX 9080. They're not going to produce an RX 9090. They're going to cap it off at the 9070 XT. And I'm willing to put my money on the 7900 XTX being faster than the 9070 XT. And you can get one of these right now for $830 before those tech tariffs. The 5080 was such a bad graphics card at launch, it made this thing look even better. All I gotta say, I told you so. The only people who shouldn't consider the 700 XTX are people who really wanna do ray tracing. And really wanna do ray tracing implies that you don't just wanna do ray tracing, but you wanna do path tracing, which is the next level of ray tracing. It's something that Nvidia excels very well at for their RTX 4000 and 5000 series GPUs. From what I recall, I know Alan Wake 2 and Cyberpunk 2077 have path tracing as an option, and they look even better with it. And I think there's more games coming out that'll have path tracing as an option. So unless you're crazy about that, 7900 XTX, $830. During Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you could have found one of these for about $770, which was very good. But this being only about 60 bucks off, that's not bad. Especially before tariffs, that's not bad. It's not gonna be as good as a price to performance GPU for Radeon as the 9070 XT whenever that comes out at 500 bucks, I guess. But you aren't gonna be able to get your hands on one of those for a very long time, whereas this you can get right now. And like I said, unfortunately, the 5080 has made this graphics card look really good. And I expect people to start buying up this graphics card, especially knowing the shortage issues and the scalpers and bots that are plaguing the 5080 and the 5090. So 7900 XTX, best graphics card below $1,000. That isn't gonna break your bank, but offers insane 4K gaming performance with 24 gigabytes of VRAM, which guess what, is still more than the 5080 that just came out. This is good. Now for the best graphics cards, well, I'm gonna be real with you. I tried looking up used 4090s on different used marketplaces. And something weird that I noticed was on launch day for reviews of the 5090, there were a few people who put their 4090s on sale for like $1,300 to $1,500, which is, I'd take that. But then a week afterwards, and with reviews of the 5080 especially, I'm not seeing any used RTX 4090s on used marketplaces. I want to say everyone who was hoping the 5080 and 5090 would be resounding successes to upgrade from their 4090 or 4080 are gonna keep holding out. So unfortunately, there's really no good new GPUs to recommend above $1,000. And it doesn't help that supply issues look very grim for the RTX 5090. I mean, even Micro Center, actually no, this is a funny stat that I think Gamers Nexus just posted, but it could be that Nvidia sent out more 5090s to tech reviewers and influencers in total than all of the GPUs they had available to give out at all the Micro Center locations in the United States. That's hilarious. I feel fortunate to have this in my hands, but for the rest of you, that sucks. So yeah, there's no good graphics cards to recommend above $1,000. I'm sorry. I told y'all to buy all of them back in November and December, and here we are. So that's all of the best and worst graphics cards for the month of February, and as usual, all of them can be found in the description below. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.